Hello, welcome to the channel. Hang on, where's my fucking Twitch gone? Did I close Twitch? I've closed Twitch. I can't see chat. I'm really smart. Anyway, welcome to the video, YouTube viewers. Today we're going to be doing a tier list. We're going to be ranking all of the 10th Doctor episodes. I open Twitch back up, and the first message is just in all caps. Wow, moron. Oh, it's from Metal. You see, that makes sense. That does make sense. Right. So let's see the rankings they've already put up. Greatest of all time, fantastic, good, okay, and bad. I'm happy with those. I don't feel that we need to modify those. Let's begin with Last of the Time Lords. I'm going to be doing this a lot more from memory than I am with the Ninth Doctor ones, because a lot of these I haven't seen in a while, and Last of the Time Lords is one of them. But as far as I recall, it does character fine, or pretty well. It does plot fine until the conclusion, where the Doctor basically gets Jesused by the satellites. If you've seen it, you know what I'm referring to. I don't think that's very well justified, and I think it's cringe. I think this episode glorifies the Doctor too much in a way that I really don't like. And when Theory's just messaged me, he says that he's not convinced Neil Patrick Harris is playing the Toymaker, but he would not complain if he was. I'm going to ask him, who do you think he's playing? So, because of that, I mean, here's the thing, right? Last of the Time Lords would be, like, amazing in the current run. It would be great. But let's go. I think it's okay, because thematically, I really dislike it. And everything else about it is probably pretty good to great up until the climax. And that's pretty important. So I'm putting it an okay. But this is memory. This is memory. My memory going here. From memory, I kept saying that, what was it? The Matt Smith Christmas special called Christmas Carol. Christmas Carol. I kept saying that was brilliant. One of my favorites. Went and rewatched it, and I think it's actually fucking catastrophic. Maybe I'll explain why one day. Theory says, the greatest foe ever, which means puts me in mind of Omega or the Valiard. Oh! What if it is the Valiard? It wouldn't actually be the worst place to do a Valiard story. Because, I mean, you know, near the end of the Doctor, like, it would actually kind of make sense if this was like the... Anyway, let's get back on it. I don't think the look really suits Omega, to be honest, but maybe he's Omega. Waters of Mars, greatest of all time. It doesn't only nail the characters, it nails them and does new exciting things with them that we haven't seen before. It has a great story. It's fucking awesome. Waters of Mars obviously belongs in the top tier. Daleks in Manhattan. Pretty good. I think there are a couple of flumpy plot elements. Hang on. No, Daleks in Manhattan is part 1. Which I think the only weak aspect of that is that, like, Dalek Sec looks goofy as a hybrid, and the pig slaves look goofy. I don't care if stuff in Doctor Who looks goofy. That's not the same thing as bad writing, right? And honestly, I would prefer it if Dalek Sec, this hybrid, looked a bit different, and probably the pig slaves as well. but I don't think it's gonna bring it down a tier. I think this is probably fantastic. But again, this is one that I need to rewatch to cement this ranking. Unicorn and the Wasp I have seen pretty recently. I think it's pretty good, but not amazing. Here's the thing, right? Like, I would put it in okay if we're talking about enjoyment, but I think it's still a well-constructed story. Probably. Is it? I'll put it in okay. I think 42 is the epitome of okay. However, I think it does really good stuff with the characters. I think that it manages to be unengaging despite being basically pretty good on all accounts. Like, everything about it is pretty well executed. I know Chibnall wrote it. It's a shame we can't get more of that energy. But, like, yeah, I think it's probably in good, actually. Even though, like, there are two tiers of good, and it's definitely in the lower one. It doesn't really do anything exceptional, but it's just a very solidly put together piece of television. I think Last of the Time Lords is better than Daleks in Manhattan. I'm sure you do. They're all sweaty and gross. Yeah, you know, they have the sweat man who comes and applies sweat to them. The Sound of Drums. I think it's certainly better than Last of the Time Lords. Basically, Sound of Drums provides really good stuff between the Doctor and the Master. The plot works. It sets up the tension pretty well. Yeah, I think it's pretty good, if not fantastic. I'm definitely putting it above 42. School Reunion. It services the characters well. It has a story that relates to the arcs that the characters are going through at the time. I think it does Sarah Jane justice. The Krillitane stuff is kind of goofy, but I don't think in a way that is detrimental to the actual series. Yeah, put it in fantastic. One day I aspire to become the Grease Man. You just want to apply grease to David Tennant. I see through you. The Poison Sky. Great. It's fucking great. Sontaran two-parter was really good. Luke Radigan's arc is really well done. The plot is really well constructed. The Sontarans are absolutely done justice in a way that they probably hadn't been done since their debut. It's great. It's really good stuff. It honestly makes me want to put like a tier in between fantastic and greatest of all time. You know what? I'm going to put these in good. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I do. Obviously, Fairest of the Dead is going in greatest of all time. It's fucking great stuff. Even though it ends with, even though towards the end the Doctor scares off a villain by telling him about how cool he is, which becomes an insufferable Moffat trope later on. The Doctor stands there going, "Oh, we're in the biggest library in the universe, and I'm the Doctor. Look me up." And then the Vashnarada is like, "Oh no." It's like, you could still just fucking eat him, right? If you looked him up, you would know that he's made of fleshy bits. Like, what do you think he's gonna do? Because like that's one of those things, right? With those threats that Moffat wrote, is they were always pretty empty. Like when he did the same thing in The Funeral, the one where he was like at Missy's funeral or whatever, and he's talking to that funeral director guy, and he says, "Look me up under cause of death," and the funeral director's like, "Oh no, you've killed so many people, I'm gonna run away." But it's like, it's not like the Doctor would actually have done anything, and maybe in that circumstance the funeral director wouldn't have known that, but like in the Forest of the Dead, like the Vashtanarada should have known. Like, it would have looked up everything about the Doctor. It would have known, "Oh, you can't actually do anything to me right now. You've just been involved in a lot of stuff. Like, I don't actually have any immediate reason to be scared of you." But it's still fucking in greatest of all time. Lazarus Experiment. bad. I don't think I need to explain. Smith and Jones is fantastic. It does a really good job of establishing Martha as the Doctor and re-establishing the 10th Doctor as the Doctor, as a character, and re-establishing the 10th Doctor as a character for new viewers, and that's basically its entire focus. The plot is fucking wacky, but, you know, it doesn't, that's not a problem. It's one of the wackier ones. It's about big space rhinos, but it's treated properly. It doesn't sacrifice its own stakes. It's not like wacky in any way that's detrimental to the story or the overall series. Fear Her. I think this one's probably overhated, but I'm certainly not going to call it good. I mean, the thing is, the characters are nailed in it. And, like, the characters are nailed in the Lazarus Experiment as well. Like, the characters are on point, you know? As much as the plot fucking sucks, and it's a ridiculous episode and everything about it is fucking stupid, at the end of the day, you still get to see the 10th Doctor running around being the 10th Doctor. Another problem I have with Lazarus Experiment is that it doesn't explore its subject matter as well as it could, right? Because, like, I would much rather Doctor Who be just a bit more willing to lose the child audience and maybe focus on its adult audience a bit more. Because Lazarus Experiment, certainly if it's going to do stuff like Lazarus Experiment, right? Because everything interesting about Lazarus Experiment is lost in the need to make it about a big scary monster, rather about this age reduction technology, right? You have a scene in that episode where the Doctor is lecturing a human being who is like 80 years old, saying, a longer life isn't always a better one, right? This is wrong what you're doing. You can't, like, you can't, you've lived your time. It's time to accept that and move on. When he's fucking like 900 years old, like, shut the fuck up, Doctor. Would you have just accepted death at 80 years old? Maybe, but like, you haven't done. But that's never really addressed, which is, and it would be a really interesting concept to explore if they just at least drew back on the giant monster element, if not removing it completely because it's fucking ridiculous, in a bad way. But like, if they removed it or just drew back on it a lot, you could really focus on the Doctor's ideas relating to age and relating to Lazarus's experiment in which he's reduced his age and brought himself back to his youth. And that would be really interesting to explore. And the episode really drops the ball on exploring that. I'm happy to call it bad, to be honest. Even though it's like, it's got significantly better character writing than a lot of the new stuff. Or most of the new stuff. All of the new stuff except for the Diodati. Planet of the Dead. Chat, I want you to guess where I'm going to put Planet of the Dead. This is actually fun to do with all of them. We should keep doing this. I think Planet of the Dead is fun. I agree, but does that mean it's good? By the way, you said it okay, bad, okay tier, greatest of all time. It's probably not. I'm going to rule out greatest of all time. I'll say that much. Everyone is saying okay or bad. Good. Hot take time. Planet of the Dead is good. It doesn't do any, like, it's a bit too cheesy for me. I don't like particularly I don't hate it either. I just don't. You know what? I'm being too harsh on it. I don't hate the flying bus at the end. I've heard people's criticisms of it, and it's always just like, Malcolm is annoying. Okay, sure, like, kinda. Or it's pointless. Also, sure, like, it doesn't have to exist. And we would happily have just, if I'd never seen it, I wouldn't be going, you know what, it really feels like David Tennant's era is missing an extra story in between two of the in between, like, what, The Next Doctor and Waters of Mars, where he goes to, like, they go through a bus to another planet and they find these stingrays that eat the planet. It wouldn't feel like it was missing. It's not the worst Easter special. No, it is not. However, I don't actually think there's anything wrong with it in terms of substance, right? It is just a goofy, hour-long, fun thing that you can enjoy watching if you want. The characters are all pretty well done. The story works pretty well. Yeah, I don't see any reason. I think that this one is so fucking overhated. It is fine at worst. It's really improved by the Lady Christina Big Finish stuff. Oh my god! Someone who's listened to the Lady Christina Big Finish stuff. What's it like? What the fuck do they do? It's not even RTD's worst special, TBH? No, I also agree with that. I think that The Next Doctor is worse, probably, even though the character stuff is way better. Right. The Fires of Pompeii. Guess where I'm putting this. Continue to guess. Do your guessing. Where is it going? Where? I can't believe you've done this. I haven't seen the Lady Christina stuff. I'm just saying words. Understandable. Have a nice day. How is School Reunion in the same category as 42? 42 isn't horrible or anything. Like, I think 42 is a well-constructed story. It's just a goofy bit of fun. And I think all of these are probably just, like, they're just fun. They're not exceptional, but they're also certainly very solid stories that do their job. That's what I'm calling this category. Hang on. Very solid stories that do their job. There we go. That's what we mean by when we say good. Well, so where is Fires of Pompeii going? Greatest of all time, good / fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, I'm happy to put it in fantastic. I don't love how fucking melodramatic and cheesy it gets towards the end. I would much rather that the Doctor saving Caecilius is just played straight, like, as in just, it's not got all of this crazy emotional dramatic music. It's just played very straightforwardly and seriously, but that's like my main criticism of the story. It's a great one. It's a great story. Great stuff. But Sarah Jane and School Reunion makes it fantastic, at least. Very true, to be honest. Like, but I just think it's still very solid. Like, I value it more because it has Sarah Jane in it. But I think I want to make this about, like, my assessment of the writing quality of the story rather than how much I personally value them. The Satan Pit is greatest of all time. I wasn't going to make you guess. It's obvious. Personally good, but you only ask this as a hot take question. No, I'm just asking it for all of them now, except for the Satan Pit, so it's fine. New Earth. It's between bad and okay, isn't it? What's the worst thing? What's the worst thing about New Earth, chat? I watched New Earth yesterday. I think it's solid. Maybe it is. Well, okay. I remember the ending of New Earth is that he just squirts all of the medicine into a bowl and then just sprays that on the sick people, and apparently that does it. It's like, man, if only the cats had thought of that. Because as I recall, the sick people are lab rats, and the cats are testing medicines on them. But if you just mix all the fucking medicine in a bag, and then like, then what do? They just spray it on them. And not only that, I guess once you've been cured of this disease, the cure spreads like a disease to other diseased people so they can all cure each other. I think that's dumb. I think it's really dumb. I think it's sort of like Last of the Time Lords, but without the character stuff that I actually value that episode for. I think it's fun. I think it's probably fine. Idiot's Lantern. I don't actually... You know what? I'm just going to put it in NA because I don't remember it well enough. I will have to rewatch it. Maybe I'll do an entire separate review of Idiot's Lantern. Shakespeare Code is a bit cringe. Certainly a bit cringe. The character... The way Martha is treated is really fucking cringe. The most cringe line of dialogue that I remember in the Shakespeare Code is Martha going, "Oh, I'm not going to get like carted off as a slave, am I? Because they're in the past." And she's black. And the doctor just says, "Oh, just walk around like you own the place. It works for me." And you look at him like, "Yeah, you're fucking white, you moron. You fucking piss baby." Like, and I remember there's like a decent amount of stuff written in it like that. There's certainly a lot of cringe in the episode. And it's like, and that's not something that's like, I would be happy for the doctor to say that kind of thing and then be challenged on it later. Never comes up again. You know, that's just him. Martha got told, you know, just be white. Unironically, there's a lot of discourse about Martha's treatment in the series being racist, and I think that's probably the most racist moment. I think that's probably the worst it ever gets. People will argue that Family of Blood is worse, but Family of Blood is like, it's just presenting racism as it was. It's not actually... Like, it's doing the opposite of the Shakespeare Code, where it's not pretending that just walking around like you own the place is going to solve a racism. I'm just enjoying the way that the person in chat has phrased this. Human nature is way better at racism. That's just funny. Family of Blood nails racism. It's never been done that well since. I agree, but this sounds really funny. Ultimately, though, I think it does the characters fine, other than those lines. Although I'm not even convinced it's a thing that the 10th Doctor wouldn't say. I think it would be the kind of thing, if he did say, the episode should be about him learning about why that was cringe. And I think it's probably bad. It's okay or bad. If we put Fear Her in okay, then we get to put this in okay, I think. But I think... yeah, that's my solution to that. Obviously, Midnight's the greatest of all time. Midnight is the best Doctor Who episode. It's just phenomenal character work, incredible building of tension. And I mean, it is just its character work. You know, it's a Bottleneck episode 1 room, characters in that room. It's incredible stuff. Where do we think we're putting Rise of the Cybermen, gang? Also, very curious what order these are in. Because it seems kind of random. Where do we think we're putting Rise of the Cybermen? Okay. Okay. I think the worst thing about Rise of the Cybermen is where it's placed. It is the introduction for a whole new generation to the Cybermen, where, in actuality, I think it should be the Elseworlds story that it's written as, because it fundamentally changes the nature of the Cybermen from this slow, creeping plague that slowly creeps up on humanity and takes over slowly. Listen to Spare Parts. It's a much better origin story for the Cybermen, right? And it much better fits the idea of what the Cybermen are supposed to represent in the show. Rise of the Cybermen is neat. It's a fun idea, and it works. It's a well-written, self-contained story about what if the Cybermen were like this in a parallel universe. However, it's trying to reintroduce the Cybermen to a whole new generation, and I don't like that it does that with a kind of Cyberman that's fundamentally different to what the Cybermen have been before, what the Cybermen have represented in the show until now. However, I think it's pretty good. Like, I think it's a pretty good story. The main thing I don't like about it, thematically, is how John Lumick becomes this big, grand cyber controller, right? If you remember the scene, John Lumick he's coming and pissing everywhere. Remember that scene? No, where John Lumick gets converted against his will, and then later on, the Doctor is talking to a Cyberman, and where's Lumick? Where's your great creator, right? And the Cyberman says, he has been upgraded, and the Doctor's like sort of derisively, so he's just like you, right? And there's so much power in that line of, you know, almost suggesting like, so it makes the point about the Cybermen so clear, right? That John Lumick's mind created the Cybermen, and now the Cybermen themselves have reduced him to just being another one of their pawns, right? It perfectly encapsulates what the problem with them is, or in extension, you know, the kind of things that they might represent in the real world. It is a perfect little bow to tie off the story with, to tie off John Lumick's arc with, to be an end to his character. Yeah, it's perfect poetic justice. Then the Cyberman the Doctor is talking to says, no, he's not just like us. He has been designated cyber controller and wheels out John Lumick on a giant fucking throne where his eyes are glowing and his brain is hanging out of his head because it's so massive. And it's like, that contradicts the entire point. That's like the opposite of a poetic ending for this character. That's wish fulfillment for this character, pretty much. Like, he was basically just hurried into it by the Cybermen, but ultimately, yeah, that's exactly what he wanted. It's almost like if you asked him about it in retrospect, you'd have gone, yeah, that was for my own good. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so fuck that. Like, it would have been so much better if John Lumick just became a genuinely normal Cyberman. However, I don't think that makes it a bad story. I think it could be much, much improved with that being changed. Very solid story that does its job. End of Time Part 2. It's fine. The character stuff is great. You know what? I should have asked you to guess where I was putting that. The character stuff is great. I'm not a big fan of I Don't Want to Go, but like, so much. The plot is fucking bizarre and stupid and like in a bad way. Like not just goofy in a fun way. The plot is damaging. However, the character stuff is fucking great. The Runaway Bride. Boom, boom. Someone's got their music on outside. Someone's playing fucking tunes. I think it's okay, but I don't remember it that well, so I can't really elaborate. Army of Ghosts. Where do we think Army of Ghosts is going, chat? Where do we think Army of Ghosts is gonna fucking go? Solid. Okay. Greatest of all time for the bitch fight of Canary Wharf. That's in the next episode. Army of Ghosts fucks up the world building. The ghost invasion is literally never mentioned again. And so many Doctor Who episodes, particularly in the Russell era, have this problem where a massive thing happens of like, oh, hey, by the way, there were just ghosts around for 6 months in the Doctor Who universe, or at least something that everyone thought were ghosts. That's never mentioned again. Just that, you know, that doesn't come up. Like, think about like Power of Three and Army of Ghosts, right? Like, plenty of Doctor Who stories, they should just pop up and there are fucking black cubes everywhere, or there are ghosts everywhere. And if that was really well integrated into the world building of the Doctor Who universe, I would be saying fucking banger, right? Amazing storytelling. However, it's never mentioned again, never comes up. No one's like, hey, remember how there were fucking ghosts everywhere for like 6 months of Earth, of like the whole world? There were just ghosts fucking everywhere. You could see them. They were on TV. Do you remember? No one ever mentions it. It's not actually a fault of the episode itself, but I think they knew in the episode when they were writing it that it was a one and done story, so they probably shouldn't have had it have implications like that because they knew they weren't going to address them. For that reason, I will put it in okay. Actually, it's probably... It's not its fault. It's the stories that come after. And it does do good build-up. And it does good character work. But I'll put it in okay. Not married to that one, though. And you know what? A lot of things get this wrong that probably I haven't... Do any of these things? No, I don't think any of these things get that wrong, actually. Poison Sky does. This Poison Sky definitely fucks that up. People should definitely mention, hey, remember how the world was gassed for ages? Remember that day the sky caught on fire? But, like, to a lesser extent than, hey, remember how there were ghosts everywhere for fucking months. Isn't that just a trope of Doctor Who in general? Web of Fear, Invasion of the Dinosaurs, for example? Yes, and it sucks in those stories as well. Like, those are big problems with those stories. Human Nature, greatest of all time. Love and Monsters, bad. Shocking, I know. I don't remember much about Planet of the U, to be honest. Like, they go out of their way to reference other not as important as stuff, but not this. Can you rephrase that for me? Because I think I know what you're saying, but I'm not sure. Love and Monsters is good. I'm going to fight you. I will have to rewatch it, because I haven't rewatched it. I've done Love and Monsters today. I'm pretty sure it's bad, guys. Because I haven't rewatched it recently, but I have rewatched videos about it. And assuming that those videos weren't literally lies, it's pretty bad. Because the criticisms were referencing real things. It wasn't someone just telling me, yeah, it's bad, by the way. It was referencing what happens in the story and me going, yeah, that doesn't sound very good. It might be okay. It has great character work. I'm not convinced, actually. Maybe it does. People keep saying it. It also has the paving slab ending, which I have become more merciful to recently, because I guess the Doctor's only alternative is to just let Ursula die. But it's still, like, they still decided to write that in as the ending. Ursula becomes a fucking paving slab. But, like, I don't think it assassinates the Doctor in the way I used to, because, like, his only alternative is to just let her die. Like, if you can save someone but you can't save their arms and legs, you save them, right? I will have to rewatch it, but for now it's staying in bad, I'm afraid. Why won't you notice me? Because you just said hi! I'm not going to acknowledge you saying hi. I know I'm here. I know. Hello. Right. She's one of a few officially immortal characters. Wait, that makes her immortal? Oh no, that's fucked then. He shouldn't have made her immortal as a paving slab. I would not want to be destined to be an eternal paving slab. One-off line that references the paving slab fellatio does not warrant putting in bad. I agree. It's bad because of other reasons. Where does Planet of the Ood go? I think Planet of the Ood probably goes in solid stories that do their job. Impossible Planet is going with the Satan Pit. Actually, there are a few problems with the ending of the Satan Pit. First and foremost, the TARDIS just lands where the Doctor needs it exactly when he needs it. It's very contrived. It's very lucky. It's very just, the story is over now. We needed you to think that there was no way out for the story, but now the story's ended. Here's the TARDIS. Actually, it was fine. It's very conspicuous, and they don't really earn the Doctor getting the TARDIS back. They could have written that better. Other thing that strikes me as interesting is the Satan's trap for the Doctor. If you recall, at the end of the Satan Pit, the Doctor says, I destroy the power source, I destroy, like, this prison, the planet goes in the hole, right? He's holding a rock over the jar that powers the planet. That was a sentence that made sense. Sorry, I was distracted by a chat that said Ursula paving slab confirmed to the 60th anniversary, which I agree with. Then the Doctor says, you're smart enough to use this whole system against me. If I destroy the gravity well, destroying the planet, the rocket can't escape, and all of the crew die, including Rose. So, just wait a bit. Just wait for the rocket to get out and then destroy the vase. Unless the Devil's Mind... does the Devil's Mind escaping with Toby on that rocket? Toby with tattoos on his face and fire coming out of his mouth. Is that definite then? That the Devil would have escaped via the rocket? Because then I'm happy to keep it in greatest of all time. Okay, I'm happy to interpret it that way if that's how everyone else is seeing it. Silence in the Library, greatest of all time. Turn Left, greatest of all time. Evolution of the Daleks, very solid stories that do their job. Or maybe just okay, actually. Evolution of the Daleks has a few plot problems. namely the Doctor being able to mix in all of his DNA with the Dalek DNA via a lightning strike. I guess that electricity carries genetic code now. But I think that's the only plot problem I can name with it. I think part 1 is certainly a tier above part 2, so I'm putting it on okay. But it's... Well, you know what? I was about to literally say, but it's still a very solid story that does its job. Yeah. It's really good to have a Dalek story that actually explores how the Daleks' need for purity actually comes at ends with their need for survival. Really, something that's needed to be explored for ages, and it's explored really well in Daleks in Manhattan, and the story never gets enough credit for doing what it does. People are always just like, oh, the Dalek hybrid looks goofy. It's a bad story. Bad, very bad. Also, the Doctor's interactions with the Cult of Skaro are fucking great. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, very solid stories that do their job. The Stolen Earth is a very solid story that does its job, I think. It does all of the characters justice. And it builds up to the next episode pretty well. The Christmas Invasion. Where are we putting that, do you think? Where are we putting Christmas Invasion, gang? Okay. Fantastic. Interesting. It's certainly going between bad and fantastic. It's one of these two. I can't remember any big problems with it other than the fact that the Sycorax spaceship hovering over London really doesn't get mentioned ever again and really doesn't seem to influence the world going forward. It's a really interesting approach to introducing a new Doctor to have, again, the focus on the companions. It's very similar to Rose in that respect, that Rose gets the focus and then you get slowly introduced to the new Doctor via her perspective. A lot of people don't like that. It's fine. It's not an inherently bad decision. I understand if you're more invested in the Doctor as a character than Rose, particularly if you don't like Rose, how that could be really frustrating, but she's not a bad character or anything. I would put it in a very solid story that does its job. Elton mentions it. He does mention it. I say never mentioned again, right? The problem isn't actually never mentioned again. I suppose its impact isn't felt in the future, right? Its impact isn't felt going forwards. Its impact should be felt a lot more heavily than it is. The world saw a massive spaceship hovering over London that then hypnotized like a third of the population. That should factor into the characterization of characters that we see 20 years later, you know? Like people, that was a world-shaking event that would have impacted culture, how people perceive the world, all that mad stuff, right? Every companion in the future should be more receptive to the idea of the TARDIS. Because fuck it, who knows what's out there? You've seen a fucking spaceship hovering over London. I would counteract reminding you there is a Christmas episode where everyone leaves London because of the repeated alien attacks on Christmas. Very true. I'm keeping it in very solid stories that do their job. But that is very true. I still don't think that's enough, right? It needs to be fully integrated into the world building rather than something that's just sort of paid service to occasionally. But that is very true. Like the worst it gets treated is actually in um this one, I forgot what it's called, Runaway Bride, where the Doctor mentions the big alien spaceship hovering over London, and Donna's like, "Oh, I didn't notice. I was on holiday." You're like, "What the fuck? No, that's not how. Sorry, you can't do that. No." I love, yeah, people are mentioning that Moffat retconned a lot of the big impact stuff that Russell did to the world in Series 5, which I do think is a good decision, right? I would I think it's a great decision to have just an explanation for why this stuff hasn't impacted the world in a massive way. However, then Moffat goes and does even worse stuff, like with the Power of Three, and with like he puts a dinosaur in the middle of London in like the 1800s. People would remember that, Chief. So yeah, like it's fun. That's just a fun little oddity. I read Gridlock as something else. I'm not going to tell you what. I think the Chibnall is the worst for retcons. Gallifrey and the Master. I mean, I agree. Journey's End is okay. It does the characters well, but I think in terms of plot structure, it's not very strong. It's the it's the action adventure finale where the characters just are in a room and they talk, which is so often done very poorly, and it doesn't want you to feel like all it is characters in a room talking, but it is. It's characters in a few different rooms talking, but it is just characters talking to each other. When it wants to feel like this high stakes adventure thing, which, like, what Journey's End does, it also, like, oh, Donna, she was by the right buttons to press to just destroy all of the Daleks. That's how the story ends. She found the destroy the Daleks button. Not just one button, it's several buttons, but you know. The characters are still written very well, but I think to execute the kind of conclusion that they want to execute, there needs to be the kind of story that facilitates more on-your-feet decision-making for the characters. More payoffs that are demonstrated through action rather than words. More of a physical adventure in terms of what the characters are running around and doing. Pretty sure they were standing in the main Dalek control panel in the main Dalek ship. Yeah, there still shouldn't be a panel that lets you fucking destroy every Dalek in the world in that room. And it's not either. It's Davros's basement where they keep him. It's the cellar. Like, do you think the Dalek Supreme wants Davros, who he explicitly is shown to look down upon in that episode, and keep as a pet? Do you think the Dalek Supreme wants him to have buttons in his room that he could just use to destroy all the fucking Daleks if he wants? The Zygon Dupater is executed well in terms of effects on the world. You're right. That's a really good example of world building in Doctor Who. And the thing that it's fallout of is actually a pretty small event considering relative to everything else. You know, a few Zygons arrive on Earth and they don't even make a public display or anything. There's no spaceship hovering over London. It's just they arrive on Earth and have like some dealings with UNIT in a basement somewhere in London under the National Gallery. Partners in Crime, I think, is a very solid story that does its job. Bit too goofy for me personally, but I don't think that makes it a bad story. Also, the effects have aged horribly, but again, I don't think that makes a bad story. I don't hate it or anything. Maybe if I rewatched it, I would find a new appreciation for it. But as far as I remember it, I just remember it being, yeah, it's pretty solid. Gridlock. Same stuff I just said about Partners in Crime. Pretty much. I would need to rewatch it, but I remember it being pretty solid, but nothing exceptional. I think Voyage of the Damned is fantastic. Great character work. A really great... it gets a bit cringe towards the end with like the messianic stuff, and did manage to piss off the one survivor of the Titanic. But I still think it's a really well put together story with great characters. The plot works, and it's it's the kind of thing that Journey's End needed to be. It's the sort of action adventure high stakes thing where characters have to act on their feet and all this kind of stuff. It really doesn't pull its punches. It's appropriate for the season. It's everything I think you'd want out of a Doctor Who special for Christmas, although I think it's a bit too cheesy and a bit too messianic towards the end. I think it's fantastic. End of Time Part 1! I think the Master transforming everyone into himself is goofy in a bad way, particularly with the effect that they use for the transition. I think it's way too melodramatic. I think it's going with the part 2. The Next Doctor, astonishingly good character work, ruined by a horrible finale that I can't stomach, with a giant steampunk Cyberman mech crushing London under its massive feet. This is so bad, and the consequences of this are so clearly ignored by the story that the next showrunner felt the need to retcon it immediately, and he was right. However, the character work is great, which is why I'm not putting it in bad. The character work is beautiful. And it wastes Victorian Cybermen as a concept, right? What you want is just a low stakes Cyberman story. You want the Cybermen to be like in Daleks in Manhattan. You want them to have like a lab underground in a basement somewhere where they're trying to convert people but only have access to the resources in Victorian London. That'd be fucking pog. And they're working on all of this stuff, right? All of these experiments to try and make new Cybermen. And it's like, you'd have some pretty grim stuff in there. Cybermen, Silver Turk, exactly, that kind of thing. And you could see the new Cybermen that they've created, some really cool, like, grotesque things they could be. And that potential is all wasted with the weird, very bombastic, very cheesy, very camp approach that really doesn't fit at all to this kind of story. Doctor's Daughter is meh. I think I agree, but I haven't watched it in fucking ages, so that's where it's going for now. Obviously, Utopia is greatest of all time. How could it not be? It's one of the best reveals in Doctor Who history. And a reveal, just to be clear, isn't just, oh my god, I wasn't expecting that. It actually has, like, implications for the world and the story that are very clearly outlined within the story itself. The emotional stakes for the characters are very clearly developed. The Master being there is developed pretty well too. Like, all of the pieces for this reveal are put in place in a really great way that you don't realize that the puzzle pieces are all being lined up for this reveal later, which means that this just gets to slap you in the fucking face with its surprise. It's immaculately crafted, this one. Hang on, where all three parts of the story. So Utopia, greatest of all time. Very solid, does their job. Where did we put Sound of Drums? I can't see it. We've not done it yet. We have done it already, have we? Oh yeah, there it is. Sound of Drums, very solid, does their job. Okay, Last of the Time Lords. It kind of goes downhill, that story, doesn't it? Right, where are we putting Tooth and Claw, gang? Oh, not only does Utopia execute on its reveal, but the stakes and impact of that reveal are immediately felt. The Master separates the Doctor from the TARDIS and strands him at the end of the universe. The Doctor's emotional state in that episode is fucking wrecked, and it's earned. Okay, for Tooth and Claw, bad, okay, fantastic. I think it's fine. I don't think there's any big horrific problem with it. I think it's probably a very solid story that does its job. What's your main... Because I don't put anything okay, I guess, unless I can think of something wrong with it. Because generally the character writing in all of these elevates them to good. If it was nothing but the character writing, they would all be in either good, fantastic, or greatest of all time. So there needs to be something wrong with like the plot or the theme or the ideas to constitute it being below that. I guess Lazarus Experiment wouldn't... The character writing in that is a bit dodgy. And in the Shakespeare... So... Just more jank CGI, story-wise, honestly, it's fine. Yeah, it's like you couldn't expect... Like... The special effects is one of the last things I'm judging these stories on. I don't think it's actually factoring into any of these decisions. Very solid on that basis. All right, yeah, let's put it in very solid then. Doomsday. I think it's okay. I'm not particularly a fan of Roses and Tens' departure from one another, but I don't think it's got anything particularly wrong with it. The character writing is fine. The plot is fine as I recall, but the implications of the story aren't properly managed. I don't think it was written with the intention of properly managing the implications of the story. There were Daleks fucking everywhere, gunning people down. I guess the Battle of Canary Wharf does... You know what? Yeah. It does actually come up quite a bit in the future. I think the implications of it are dealt with in the immediate future, but not as well as they could be. It might be very solid, but does its job. Sure. When Pete teleports in front of the Dalek gate, why does he not get sucked in for like 5 seconds? Yeah. The thing is, they could have choreographed that scene in a way that made like more sense. Like, it's not like the events we saw were impossible. It's just that the way that they were communicated to us. Like, it was jank action rather than a thing that couldn't have actually happened. You know, like when you see a punch not connect. I see you really don't like any of these finales. No, I don't think that the 10th Doctor has any particularly strong finales. Sontaran strategy is fucking fantastic. We've got to blink. Was anyone here watching Edar yesterday? Because you're not allowed to guess where I'm going to put this if you were watching Edar yesterday. So where are we putting Blink, people? Let's guess. Greatest of all time? Solid? Fantastic? Very solid? Greatest of... If you don't put it in greatest of all time, I don't know anymore. Greatest of all time, obviously. Greatest of all time. Greatest of all time. Greatest of all time, or we riot. Not greatest of all time. Put Blink in the bad for the laughs. I wouldn't put Blink in bad. It's only going in okay. That's where it's going. First message I see is, what the fuck? Sad. I don't know anymore. Jay. It's just not very good. It's not very well put together. It's fun to watch once, and then if you think about any of the events that happen in it, you're like, what the fuck? Why did that happen? That makes no sense at all. But how did the angels get the fucking TARDIS from the parking garage to west of Drumlins? Did they haul it on their backs through a city? And I guess no one saw that. The time travel implications are fucking insane, and the angels have entirely inconsistent speed depending on the story. The characters are fine, but I don't think the character work is up to the normal standard of the Russell era. The characters are fine. The atmosphere carries the episode. It does, and we're talking about writing. The other thing that the episode does really well is figuring out how to execute a dramatic reveal, how to reveal information to the audience in an engaging way. And it's great at that, and the fact that it's fucking great at that has tricked people into ignoring basically all the rest of it. The characters are fine. It's certainly not like Chibnall bad. It's, you know, those are different worlds, different leagues. But it's okay. It has big problems. Big problems. It actually uses time travel in a show about time travel. Yes, and it fucks it up. The implications are bad for the world. Surely you find the episode entertaining, I assume you mean, as a self-contained 45 minutes. And sure, I find it entertaining. Girl in the Fireplace. We're moving on now. That's what's happening. Where are we putting Girl in the Fireplace? Greatest of all time? Certainly a shout. Solid. I'm going to split you two down the middle, and I'm going to put it in Fantastic. I think that's where it belongs. Ooh. I've just realized about Age of Steel that the thing that I was the main thing I was complaining about in Rise of Cybermen does not affect Age. Isn't actually a problem with Age of Steel. Not Rise of the Cybermen. It happens in the second part, not the first. So maybe Rise of the Cybermen gets a little nudge up? No, I don't think so. Family of Blood goes in Greatest of All Time. Obviously. Where's the part one? There we go. There we go. And you know what? Let's just put Idiot's Lantern in bad, because it probably is. I just need to rewatch it. We've done it. We've ranked all the 10th Doctor episodes. Thank you for tuning in on Twitch and on the Empress of Milk channel. Until next time, goodbye.